The air in our apartment always smelled of two things: old books and fresh coffee. It was a comfortable, familiar scent that had been the backdrop to the 7 years my husband Leo and I had been married. He was a software engineer, brilliant but quiet, with a kind face framed by dark, unruly hair he rarely bothered to tame. I was a librarian, a profession I'd always romanticized for its peaceful solitude. Our life was a quiet symphony of shared evenings on the couch, books piled between us, and the low hum of his computer from the study, a sound as constant as my own heartbeat. But lately, a third scent had entered our home, the metallic tang of something synthetic and new. It was the smell of his new obsession, Aethelgard, a virtual reality game he'd been working on and, more recently, playing. At first, I was happy for him. His work was demanding, often tedious, and Aethelgard seemed to ignite a spark in him I hadn't seen in years. He'd come out of his study with flushed cheeks and sparkling eyes, telling me about the fantastical worlds he was exploring, the quests he was undertaking. I'd listen, nodding, smiling, happy to see him so engaged. The first crack in our routine appeared subtly, almost imperceptibly. It began with the late nights. He'd always worked late, but now he was coming to bed long after I'd fallen asleep, slipping in quietly so as not to wake me. I would sometimes stir in the middle of the night and feel the cold space beside me, a hollow ache that felt a lot like loneliness. I told myself it was just a new project, a phase. But the hollow feeling remained. Then came the little evasions. Once, while tidying his desk, I saw a message open on his computer screen. It was from a user named Lyra. The text was simple, mundane. "Can't wait to see you in the Vale tonight, my love." I froze, my hand hovering over a stack of papers. My stomach dropped. I hadn't meant to snoop, but the words were a punch to the gut. Lyra. It was such a beautiful, poetic name. Nothing like mine. My name is Anna. Plain, simple. I closed the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. My love. A pet name he'd stopped using for me months ago. I tried to dismiss it as part of the game. A fantasy. People adopted different identities in games, formed alliances, used flowery language. It meant nothing in the real world, right? But the seed of suspicion had been planted, and it began to grow, twisting and coiling around my thoughts. I started paying attention. I'd notice him laughing at his screen with a private, intimate joy that he no longer shared with me. I'd catch fragments of hushed conversations through the closed door of his study. "You're beautiful, Lyra," he'd whisper, his voice soft and tender. The words were a brand on my heart. They were for her, not me. One evening, unable to bear the gnawing doubt, I decided to confront him. It was a Wednesday, our date night. He'd come out of the study, a towel slung over his shoulder, his hair damp from a shower. The scent of his shampoo filled the air, a scent I still loved. "Leo," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Can we talk?" He turned, a smile on his face that faded when he saw my expression. "Sure. What is it, honey?" He walked over to the couch, sitting beside me. I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. I saw a message on your screen the other day," I confessed, looking at my hands. "From someone named Lyra." It said, "My love." The color drained from his face. His shoulders stiffened. He was silent for a long moment, the air thick with tension. "Anna, it's me, Hiti. It's just a game," he finally said, his voice flat. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of nervous frustration. "It's Aethelgard. In the game, Lyra is my partner. We're in a guild together. It's nothing, honestly." "Nothing?" I asked, a bitter taste in my mouth. "You call her my love. You spend all your time with her. I hear you talking to her, whispering things you haven't said to me in months." A single tear escaped, tracing a cold path down my cheek. "What is she, Leo? What is this partner of yours?" He sighed, his gaze fixed on the floor. "She's a character, Anna. She's not real. Her real name is... I don't even know it. She lives in another country. It's just a game, an escape. It's not cheating. He looked at me then, his eyes pleading for me to believe him. Please, don't do this. Don't ruin this. I need this, Anna. I stood up, the words stinging like a slap. I need this. What about me, Leo? What about us? I need you, Leo, I said, my voice cracking. I need my husband. Not a ghost in a virtual world. I turned and walked into our bedroom, the cold space in the bed already feeling wider than a galaxy. I buried my face in my pillow, trying to drown out the low hum of his computer that I now knew was not just a sound of his work, but a siren song pulling him away from me. The days that followed were a cold, quiet war. Leo, for his part, tried. He came to bed earlier, he'd sit on the couch with me, and once he even suggested we watch a movie together. But the silence between us was heavy, laced with the unspoken tension of a secret I couldn't unsee. He'd talk about work, about our bills, about the mundane details of life, but he never mentioned the game. It was a conscious, deliberate omission, and it was tearing me apart. I felt like a fraud, living in a house that was no longer a home, with a husband who was no longer just mine. I, in turn, became a different person. The easygoing, bookish Anna was gone, replaced by a woman consumed by suspicion. I found myself in a psychological war, but I was fighting alone, without a strategy. I began to sneak into his study when he was out, a knot of guilt and dread twisting in my stomach. I'd turn on his computer, my hands shaking, feeling like a thief in my own house. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I wouldn't stop until I found it. The first few times were fruitless. His browser history was clean, his files organized and mundane. I was starting to feel crazy, a paranoid wife convinced of a phantom lover. Then, one afternoon, as I was about to give up, I saw it. A desktop folder labeled Aethelgard was not just a game. It was a whole world, with a forum, private messages, and a gallery of screenshots. I double-clicked the forum icon and felt my blood run cold. There was a message board dedicated to their guild, the Silver Sentinels. And at the top of the board, pinned for everyone to see, was a thread titled, "To Lyra, my guiding star." I clicked on it, my breath catching in my throat. It was a poem, a long, beautiful, heartfelt poem about a warrior who found his purpose, his home, in the arms of a goddess. The author was Leo, writing under his game name, Orion. It was an ode to her, to Lyra, and every word was a knife in my heart. He spoke of a destiny woven in starlight, of a love that transcended the veil of reality. My stomach was turning, and I felt a hot wave of rage wash over me. Scrolling further, I found a trove of private messages. The more I read, the deeper I fell into a rabbit hole of betrayal. They spoke of quests and virtual landscapes, of dragons they had slayed and empires they had built. But beneath the fantasy, there was a raw, undeniable intimacy. They would talk for hours about their feelings, their dreams. He would confide in her about his work frustrations, about how he felt like a cog in a machine. He had never told me these things. He'd just shut down, retreated into his shell. With Lyra, he was open, vulnerable, honest. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid it would burst. The messages were filled with virtual gifts, promises of forever, and words of love. He was building a life with her, an entire existence in a world made of pixels and code. And I, his wife, was not a part of it. I was just a memory, a ghost from the real world. I began to save screenshots of their most intimate exchanges, a cold, hard knot of determination forming in my chest. I wanted proof. Not just for myself, but for him. The final blow came in the form of a video. It was a short clip, only a minute long, from an in-game event. It showed their avatars, Orion and Lyra, standing on a mountaintop. They were getting married. The ceremony was elaborate and beautiful, with virtual confetti falling from the sky and other players' avatars cheering them on. Lyra was a stunning figure, with long silver hair and an ethereal glow. My husband's avatar, Orion, was a knight in shining armor, looking at her with a devotion so pure it was heartbreaking. As the video ended, Lyra's voice, a soft, melodic sound, filled the speakers. "My love," she whispered. "Our vows are eternal." My husband's voice, raw with emotion, replied, "To the end of time, Lyra." I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so violently I had to lean on the desk to steady myself. This wasn't just a game. This wasn't a fantasy. This was an affair. A full-blown, emotional, intimate affair that was destroying my marriage from the inside out. He had married her. He had vowed to love and cherish her. He had promised her forever. What did that make me? A second wife? A forgotten relic? I left the study, the digital wedding video playing on a loop in my mind. The old smell of books and coffee in our apartment was gone, replaced by the sterile, metallic odor of his virtual world. I walked into the bathroom, turned on the water, and stared at my reflection. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Her eyes were hollow, her face pale, and her heart felt like a cracked bell, ringing with a single deafening sound. Betrayal. I knew then that I couldn't live with this. I had to make a choice. And it wouldn't be an easy one. The next few days were a blur of cold fury and silent planning. The shock had worn off, leaving behind a hard, crystalline rage that felt almost empowering. I no longer cried. I no longer felt the sharp pang of loneliness. Instead, I felt a terrible, righteous clarity. He thought he could live a double life, that his betrayal, veiled in code and fantasy, wouldn't hurt. He was wrong. And I was going to show him just how wrong he was. My plan began with a series of small, calculated moves. I started spending money. Not recklessly, but deliberately. I went out and bought myself a beautiful, leather-bound journal, not for a novel, but for my thoughts. I also purchased an expensive new dress, something sleek and black that I knew would catch his eye, though I had no intention of wearing it for him. The feeling of the soft silk against my skin was a small, satisfying rebellion against the coarse reality of our marriage. I used the money from our joint account, knowing that every purchase was a small, quiet act of revenge. I knew the details of his virtual life with Lyra, the places they visited, the quests they embarked on. He believed this was a world where I couldn't follow, but he was a fool. I had access to all his accounts, a leftover from when I used to help him with his tech stuff. I created a new profile on Aethelgard, not as myself, but as a silent observer. I watched their interactions, saw their avatars walk hand in hand through the glowing forests of their virtual world, saw the love in his digital eyes. The pain was still there, but it was a dull, manageable ache, numbed by the cold purpose of my plan. Then came the second stage. I knew their digital anniversary was approaching, the day they had met in Aethelgard. I had read the messages. It was a day they planned to spend in a virtual castle, a fortress they had built together, a symbol of their love. It was a digital fortress I planned to shatter. I enlisted the help of a childhood friend, a brilliant programmer named Mark, who had a soft spot for me and a knack for mischief. We met for coffee, and I told him a sanitized version of my story, that Leo was obsessed with the game, that he was neglecting me, and that I wanted to mess with his head a little to bring him back to reality. Mark, bless his heart, bought it hook, line, and sinker. He gave me a special software, a piece of code that could inject itself into a system, alter a few lines, and then disappear, leaving no trace. He called it the Trojan Unicorn. The day of their anniversary arrived like a thunderclap. Leo left for work, his face looking tired but hopeful. He was probably planning to celebrate with Lyra tonight after work. As soon as he was gone, I put my plan into action. I went into his study, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. I inserted Mark's flash drive into his computer, and with a few clicks, the Trojan Unicorn began its work. The program would lie dormant until it detected Aethelgard running. Then it would inject its code. The code would cause a series of subtle glitches. Their avatars would stutter, their conversation would get garbled, and worst of all, Lyra's avatar would slowly, subtly morph. The silver hair would turn to dull gray, the ethereal glow would fade, and her face would begin to look like a stranger's. It was cruel. It was vicious. And it was exactly what I wanted. I left the study, a strange mixture of triumph and dread swirling in my stomach. The afternoon dragged on in a tense, nervous haze. I went to the library, but I couldn't focus on the books. My mind was on him, on them, and on the chaos I had just unleashed. I imagined him logging in, a smile on his face, ready to celebrate. I imagined the confusion, the frustration, the dawning horror as their perfect world began to fall apart. He came home late, long after I had put dinner on the table. He was pale, his shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. He didn't speak. He just sat down at the table and stared at his plate, the food growing cold. "Leo," I began, my voice soft but laced with a subtle edge of victory. "Are you okay? You seem, I don't know, a little off." He looked at me then, his eyes a mirror of a shattered world. "The game crashed," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Something's wrong with the code. Lyra's gone." He looked at me, a tear escaping, tracing a path down his cheek. "She's just gone, Anna." And for the first time since this all began, I felt a sharp, unexpected twist of guilt. What have I done? Was this enough? Or had I just broken a person I was supposed to love? The victory tasted like ash in my mouth. The aftermath of my digital sabotage was far more complicated than I had anticipated. The hollow look in Leo's eyes, the way he moved through our home like a ghost, it gnawed at me. I had planned for his pain, but not for my own guilt. My vengeance had felt so righteous in the abstract, but in the face of his quiet despair, it felt like a pointless, cruel game. He was a broken man. He stopped working on Aethelgard, stopped going into his study. He would sit on the couch with me, but his gaze was distant, as if he were trying to find a way back to a world he no longer inhabited. I, in turn, tried to bridge the gap. I would cook his favorite meals, talk to him about my day at the library, and ask him about his work. He would answer in monosyllables, a polite, distant stranger. One evening, unable to bear the silence, I brought it up. "Leo," I began, my voice soft, "about the game, Aethelgard. The code, can it be fixed?" He looked at me then, a flash of something in his eyes, not anger, but a profound sadness. "I don't know, Anna," he whispered. "It's not just the code. Lyra's avatar. It's corrupted. It's like a virus ate through her. She's gone." A cold spike of fear shot through me. A virus. The Trojan Unicorn. Mark's words echoed in my head. Inject itself into a system, alter a few lines, and then disappear, leaving no trace. I had done more than just mess with his head. I had erased her. I had destroyed something he had built, something that, in his own way, he had loved. I wanted to confess, to tell him what I had done. But the words died in my throat. What would he say? Would he be angry? Would he leave me? I wasn't ready to face the consequences of my actions, so I did the only thing I could. I offered to help. Maybe I can look at it? I offered, the words tasting like a lie. You know how I am with tech stuff. I can be an extra pair of eyes. He shook his head, a faint, bitter smile on his face. No, Anna. It's too late, she's gone. But he was wrong. In his grief, he had forgotten one crucial detail, his real-world connection to Lyra. The forum posts I had read, the private messages, the virtual marriage, it was all there, saved in the cloud. My guilt warred with a new, frantic purpose. I had to find a way to fix this, to bring Lyra back, not for her sake, but for his. I had to atone for my sin, a digital sin in a real-world marriage. I snuck into his study late that night. He was fast asleep, a quiet, mournful shadow in our bed. My hands trembled as I turned on his computer. I went back to the forum, to the Silver Sentinel's private chat room. I found Lyra's email address in an old message thread where they had been discussing a charity drive. I copied it, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I sent her an anonymous email. Lyra, I wrote, I'm a friend of Orion's from the real world. His game has been corrupted, and your avatar has been lost. He is heartbroken. Please, if you see this, reach out to him. He needs you. I clicked send and immediately regretted it. What was I doing? I was actively trying to bring his other woman back into his life. I was a masochist, a self-destructive fool. An hour later, as I was sitting in the living room with a book I wasn't reading, my phone vibrated. A text from Leo. Anna, it read, "Can we talk?" My stomach dropped. He knew. He had found the email. Or maybe he had fixed the code, found her, and was leaving me for good. He came out of the bedroom, his eyes red. He held his phone, the screen glowing. He walked over to the couch and sat down beside me, the space between us an ocean of unspoken words. Anna, he began, his voice barely a whisper. I got a message from Lyra. My heart hammered in my chest. She said the game crashed, but she found my real email address in an old thread. She told me she was worried about me, she said. She said she loves me. And then she sent me a picture of her. He held out the phone, and I saw it. A selfie. A beautiful woman with long silver hair and an ethereal glow. But it wasn't an avatar. It was a photograph. Of a real woman, not a character in a game. My heart stopped. Lyra was real. And in that moment, I knew I had not only broken his heart, but had also made the worst mistake of my life. Lyra was real. Her name was Elena. She was an architect in a small coastal town in Spain. And in that photograph on Leo's phone, her smile was so radiant, so genuine, that it was a physical blow. The irony was a cruel, bitter pill to swallow. In my attempt to sabotage his virtual affair, I had inadvertently given it a real-world anchor. I had, with my own 2 hands, introduced my husband's digital mistress to his real life. The confession poured out of me in a torrent of guilt and shame. I told him everything, about the jealousy, the snooping, the forum posts, the digital marriage, the software I'd commissioned from Mark, the deliberate corruption of their game files. I confessed it all, my voice a broken, trembling thing. Leo listened, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He didn't interrupt. He just let me speak, his eyes wide and pained. When I was finally done, the silence in the room was suffocating. I waited for the anger, the accusations, the inevitable pronouncement of the end of our marriage. But none came. Instead, he stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the reflection of our living room. I told her, he said, his voice quiet and strained, that my marriage was complicated. I told her I couldn't be with her in the real world. What did she say? I asked, my voice a small, terrified whisper. He turned to face me, and in his eyes I saw not just betrayal, but a terrible, profound loneliness. She said she understood, he said, and then the dam broke. Tears streamed down his face, and he sank onto the floor, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She said she had a husband, too. A good man. She loved him. But he was always distant, always preoccupied. She said she was lonely. With him, she was just an obligation. With me, she was a goddess. My heart shattered all over again. Not for myself, but for him. He had found in a virtual world what he had lost in the real one. He had found a partner, a companion, a confidant. He had found in Lyra a reflection of the man he used to be, the man who had once written me poetry and called me his love. The next week, our home was filled with a different kind of silence. Not the silence of a cold war, but the silence of 2 people grieving for a life they had lost. We talked for hours, not in hushed whispers or veiled accusations, but with a raw, painful honesty. He told me about his feelings of being invisible, of feeling like a wallet, a caretaker, not a husband. He told me about how the game made him feel alive. How Lyra saw him not just as Leo, the quiet software engineer, but as Orion, the valiant hero. I, in turn, confessed to my own fears, my fear of becoming the plain, simple Anna he would eventually tire of. My fear that my quiet life of books was no match for the vibrant, fantastical world he inhabited. We laid bare all our insecurities, our long-held resentments, our unspoken pains. It was a brutal, necessary conversation that left us both emotionally raw, bruised, and exhausted. We sat on the couch that night, side by side, but not touching. We had reached a crossroads. We could choose to walk away from each other, shattered and alone. Or we could try to rebuild, piece by painful piece, a new life from the ashes of our old one. The memories of Aethelgard, of Lyra, of Orion hung between us, a phantom limb on our marriage. He had chosen Lyra in a moment of emotional desperation, and I had chosen vengeance in a moment of furious pride. We had both, in our own ways, betrayed each other. The choice, ultimately, was ours. We would need time. And space. But as I sat on that couch, the soft, familiar scent of old books and fresh coffee once again filling the air, I felt a flicker of hope. A small, tentative spark that maybe, just maybe, our love, too, could transcend the veil of reality.